Hey guys, welcome to another video. So in this video we're going to look at 3 things to do with your mistakes aside from drowning in them and feeling like a failure. So let's get into this video and see those. Hey fam, how are you doing today? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Tobi Achudume. If this is your first time here, you are super welcome. I am so excited to have you here with me. So here on this channel, we'll talk about topics, tips and tricks that will help us grow fearlessly to the best versions of ourselves. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much for coming again. I am so glad that you have joined me here today. In this video, we are going to look at 3 things to do with your mistakes aside from drowning in them or feeling like a failure. So let's get into this video. Get yourself a cup of your favorite drink and let's talk about this. So, contrary to what you think, but in line with what you have heard over and over again, failing is not the end of the world. When you make a mistake, it is not the end of the world, right? And just on the top of my head, there are so many success stories that we have heard. And these success stories always start from the mistakes that these people have made or the failures that they have failed at. An example of this would be J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series and all of that. And to tell you how successful she has been with the storyline of Harry Potter, I have not read the book, but I know so much about her, her story, and how the book has been picked up for different TV series and movies. And that's an example of somebody who had experienced failure in so many levels, on so many levels, and still came out with a success story. And even if that is far, you think of yourself and the mistakes that you have made 5 years, 10 years, 3 years, 2 years, even last year. Some of these mistakes that you have made, you cannot even remember making those mistakes, and you have come out of them. You are still standing, aren't you? You're watching this video, so that means that the mistakes did not drown you. You came out of it now. I don't know if you learned from it, but definitely you were not drowned by that mistake. So in this video, I'm going to look at 3 things that you should do with your mistakes. And the first thing I'm going to say is that you need to analyze your mistakes. So the first reflex that you get with mistakes, and I know this for sure and I can tell you for free, is that you want to run from it because you cannot imagine making that mistake. You cannot just fathom how you were the one that made that mistake. And so because of that, with the guilt and the shame of making such mistake, you want to run away from them. While this is easier to do, it is not always the best to do. So what you should do with your mistakes instead of avoiding or running from it is that you should analyze it by asking yourself questions. So the questions that you run from, the ones that you don't want to ask because you know the answer and you're just so afraid to accept the answer, you need to ask yourself these questions. So ask yourself, how did you make that mistake? What position were you at when you got to the point of making that mistake? What were you expecting? What were you expecting from the step that you took that made you make the mistake, or what led up to the mistake? When you are taking a step or you're taking an action, you're not taking it with the plan of making a mistake. So you have an expectation from the step that you're taking. What was the step and when did you miss it? How did it become a mistake instead of a success? So ask yourself these questions, and in asking yourself these questions, give yourself the right answers. One of the reasons why I would say you should do this is that we don't want the mistakes that you have made to become useless or unproductive. And so to make sure that it is not useless, you should ask questions that made you to get into that mistake. So rather than running away from the mistakes, rather than running away from the choices that you have made or excusing yourself from the self that made the mistake, analyze it by asking questions and do yourself a great favor by answering the questions that you ask to make sure that you know exactly how you got to that point. Which leads me to number 2, learn from your mistakes. So if you ask yourself the questions in the right way, if you actually asked and answered these questions, you are going to be able to learn from mistakes. There are 3 things that we do with learning. You either learn something, you're relearning something, or you are unlearning something. So these 3 things are very important when it comes to even the mistakes that we make. So if you answer the questions right, you are able to see the things that you need to learn, the things that you need to unlearn, and the things that you need to relearn. It would be entirely useless and very unnecessary to have made a mistake and not learned something from it. So when you have asked and answered the questions in the first step, when you get to step 2 and you're learning from it, you're seeing what you should not do, you're seeing how to not do it. We often say that when you have made mistakes, you have learned one way to not do what you're trying to do, and that's something to learn. You're learning how to not do it, and you're also learning a different way to do it. You're learning the steps not to take and the steps to take. You're learning where you made the mistake and how to not make such mistake again. Another thing that you're going to learn from your mistake is how to avoid making such mistake, because you can see clearly how you got to that point. You're able to avoid it the next time you're trying to take a step that is similar to that or the exact same step. Okay, so point number 3 or step number 3 would be, do not repeat the mistakes that you have made. This may sound very obvious. I think it is very obvious, but it takes a lot to not repeat your mistakes. It takes humility to not repeat your mistakes. And I say this because aside from the fact that it is very easy for us to ignore or want to ignore the mistakes that we have made, we don't want to look into how we got into such mistakes or how we got into such pits or steps that we took that led us to making the mistake. There is also the part of you not feeling like, you feeling like you are not the person to have made that mistake. And so with that comes the fact that you feel like because you have made the mistake in the instance that you have, you already know how to not make that mistake. And that is not always true. Sometimes you need to be able to analyze and ask yourself questions before you're able to see the exact point you made a mistake as, the exact thing that you did that led you to making a mistake. But if you are being stubborn with it, which would be more than half of the world with mistakes that we make, it is impossible for you to avoid it because you are stubborn with the actions that you have taken. So stubborn in the sense that you are not willing to sit down and look at where your errors came from. You are not willing to listen to voice of reasoning or from people that are able to give you good input or good value on the mistake that you have made. Or you just don't even want to sit down and analyze it by yourself. It takes humility to not repeat mistakes. It takes humility to learn from the mistakes that we have made, because aside from the fact that you feel ashamed that you made the mistake, you also feel like you are not supposed to have made that mistake, especially if it is a mistake that you made in your space of expertise or knowledge. But again, to make sure that the mistake that you made was not entirely useless, was not entirely unnecessary, and was definitely not unproductive, it is important, very important for you to learn from the mistake to make sure that you do not repeat that mistake again. Once bitten, twice shy, they say. So if you have made a mistake, it will be very, very unproductive or very, very unreasonable to make that mistake again. We would then need to ask you what is going on. But if you follow these 3 steps and you follow them right, in the sense that you actually ask yourself questions and answer the questions in the right way, you learn from the mistake the lessons that you need to pick out of it, and you are intentional about not repeating that mistake, then you're going to not repeat your mistakes and be a better person, be the best version of yourself. Let me know in the comment section if there are any other things that you do with your mistakes aside from the ones that I have shared, or even if it is something that I have shared but you would like to elaborate on. Please let me see it in the comment section. So before I round up, I'm just going to recap on the 3 things that you should do with your mistakes that is very, very opposite to you drowning yourself in them and stop feeling like a failure. Is that 1, you should analyze it by asking yourself questions and answering the questions. 2, you should learn the lessons that you need to pick out of the mistakes that you have made. And 3, be intentional about avoiding that mistake. That means you do not want to repeat it, and you're not going to be stubborn with the analysis that you need to do on the mistake. Now, in saying all of these, I am also saying that you should not drown yourself in the mistakes. If you have made mistakes, it's okay. Move on from the mistake, in the sense that you do these 3 things to make sure that you don't go back to the mistake. Learn from your mistake. Do not remain in the pit of feeling like a failure, because again, failing is not the end of the world. And I actually heard a quote saying that when you failed, you have not failed until you have given up. So if you fail and you're still on the journey, then you have not failed. You're just learning. It's a learning process and you're just learning new things. So if you enjoyed this video, I'm sure you're going to enjoy this one. So please check this video out where we share reflective questions that you should ask yourself on your personal growth and development. If you look at this video, you're going to see questions that are going to aid you in analyzing the mistakes that you have made. So it's a win-win for you. Please let me know in the comment section if you enjoyed this video. Do not forget to give it a thumbs up, share with your friends and family. And if you have not subscribed, please subscribe to my channel. Let us grow this space to 2K. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Till next time, bye.